There's a lot of attention today being focused on homosexuality and the Bible, and what does the Bible say about same-sex relationships? A lot of people have taken some interesting views on the subject.
No homos will ever be allowed on this church as long as I'm the pastor here. Never!
Yeah. Inevitably, this discussion turns back to passages from the Bible that seem to speak either indirectly or very explicitly to the subject of homosexuality. One of the primary passages that we see is Leviticus chapter 18. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, recently, Dr. Idan Dershowitz has written an article taking a drastically different approach to the passage there in Leviticus 18. According to his reanalysis of the passage, which I'm authorized to summarize, by the way, we have a drastically different understanding of what the text originally said. So let's take a look at the passage in Leviticus 18 itself, Dr. Dershowitz's argument, and what that would mean for our understanding of this critical passage about homosexuality in the Bible. Leviticus 18 contains a list of statutes against certain types of male sexual union. Most of them involve laws against having sexual relations with people in your own family. None of you shall approach anyone who is near of kin to him to uncover his nakedness. I am the Lord. The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother you shall not uncover. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's wife you shall not uncover. It is your father's nakedness. The nakedness of your sister, the daughter of your father, or the daughter of your mother, whether born at home or elsewhere, their nakedness you shall not uncover. It's in this context that we find this specific statute against male same-sex relations. So the basic structure of the passage is the phrase, the nakedness of X, you shall not uncover. Do not uncover. This idea of uncovering nakedness has to do with sexual relations of some kind. But the main point here is that uncovering the nakedness of someone is sexual interaction of some kind. In this passage, it appears pretty straightforward. A man is not supposed to have sexual relations with people in his own family. Makes sense, right? The problem is there are some difficulties with certain aspects of the passage. For example, in verses 12, 13, and 14 you read, do not uncover the nakedness of your father's sister. Do not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister. Do not uncover the nakedness of your father's brother. That's a problem. The problem is that the verses didn't stop with just that first section. There's a second part to each verse. So when the first part of the verse says, do not uncover the nakedness of your father's sister, the second part says, she is your father's blood relative. The same with your mother's sister. She is your mother's blood relative. The problem comes in verse 14 because it says, do not uncover the nakedness of your father's brother. Do not approach his wife. She is your aunt. So it's a striking difference between what came before and what came in verse 14. This is a problem because it doesn't make sense in the passage. What comes in the second part of the verse completely negates and changes what came in the first part. In the first part of the verse, it says, don't have sex with your uncle. By making the statement, do not approach his wife, she is your aunt, it's saying that when it says, don't uncover the nakedness of your uncle, what it really means is, don't sleep with your aunt. The problem is that doesn't make sense in the passage. For one, it changes the meaning completely from the first part of the verse to the second. And secondly, it changes the meaning of the phrase, to uncover the nakedness. Now it has to mean something different in one place and something different in another within the same passage, which is a lexical difficulty. Another problem comes in verse 7. Do not uncover the nakedness of your father and the nakedness of your mother. But the second part of the verse says, she is your mother. You are not to uncover her nakedness. Well, that's strange because it said, don't uncover the nakedness of your father and your mother. But then in the second part of the verse, it leaves the father out completely and says, what I meant was just your mom. The endings to verses 14 and 7 pose great difficulty difficulty in this context because they either change the meaning of uncover the nakedness, which is the key part of this passage, or it completely changes the meaning of the first part of the verse. Interestingly enough, it does this in the two verses that talk about male same-sex relationships, sleeping with the father, sleeping with the uncle. In both cases, you have a second part of the verse that completely changes the meaning of the first part so that it only means a female relative. Well, why would this be? Why would the first part of a verse be changed by the second part of the verse? Dr. Dershowitz's argument is that a later redactor came back to this passage, which originally just said, do not uncover the nakedness of your father and of your mother and of your uncle, and said, well, that implicitly allows male same-sex relationships. So he added these extra portions to the text to clarify what the original text meant. In other words, originally, he argues, the text allowed for male same-sex relationships. There are many places in the ancient Near East which either implicitly or explicitly condone homosexuality. For example, Dr. Dershowitz cites Hittite laws. If a man has sexual relations with his own mother, it is an unpermitted sexual pairing. If a man has sexual relations with his own daughter, it is an unpermitted sexual pairing. If a man has sexual relations with his own son, it is an unpermitted sexual pairing. The Hittitologist Harry Hoffner, analyzing this passage, says, a man who sodomizes his own son is guilty of cherkel because his partner is his son, not because they are of the same sex. In other words, if Leviticus 18 originally condoned male same-sex relationships, this would not be out of character with the broader ancient Near East. Well, what's the conclusion here? Dr. Dershowitz argues that the text originally allowed for male same-sex relationships. If a store were to put out a sign that says, we don't serve breakfast after 10 a.m., implicitly they are saying that before 10 a.m., they do serve breakfast. The passage in Leviticus 18 originally would have said same-sex couplings are fine, just not these same-sex couplings. In the same way that you may have sexual relations with another woman, just not these women, your mother, your sister, your aunt, and so on. But what we have, according to Dr. Dershowitz, is a later redactor coming back in the Persian period, late in the first millennium, seeing this Leviticus 18 section and saying, no, we cannot allow for homosexuality to be condoned in this way, and added these second parts to several of the verses, particularly those that talk about sleeping with one's father and sleeping with one's uncle, in order to clarify, to completely change the meaning of the first part of the verse. Dr. Dershowitz, in his article, gives the example of a shop down the street from his home. It is called the Wine and Cheese Cask. If a researcher, an archaeologist, would find that sign during an excavation 1,000 years from now and read the wine and cheese cask, they might ask, should we be looking for a cask that holds cheese? No. Originally, the sign only said the wine cask. When they began to sell cheese, they added and cheese. In the same way, the text originally said, you shall not have sex with your mother and your father. And later, a redactor came back and said, what I mean by that is, don't have sex with your mother. The text originally said, don't have sex with your uncle. A later redactor came and said, what I meant by that was, don't have sex with your uncle, that is, to approach his wife. A later redactor changed this passage, according to Dr. Dershowitz's conclusions, in order to clarify and change the meaning and the implicit condoning of homosexuality in Leviticus 18.